the small central form of government put in place for specific purposes. The Bill of Rights only contained 10 articles when it was ratified in December of 1791, but there were 3 more which were lawfully added, the last of which was the original 13th, fully ratified in 1812. Most Americans are totally unaware of the 13th Amendment. The one we think of today as the 13th, dealing with the abolishment of slavery, is really the 14th, and so on. The real 13th Amendment reads as follows: If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present, pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States, and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them, or either of them. The original 13th Amendment, fully ratified in 1812, was clarifying a single line in the Constitution for the United States of America that basically states, no holders of title of nobility shall hold public office. If you've read your Constitution, your real Constitution, you've read that line. The most common title of nobility we currently have in the U.S. today is Esquire. You've all seen that, after an attorney's name. This is a position or title of nobility granted by the British Empire, the Crown of Great Britain. Let that sink in for a minute. All attorneys who hold bar cards cannot, under the original 13th Amendment, lawfully ratified in this country, in our Bill of Rights, they cannot serve in government office. They cannot hold any public office, nor can they be citizens of the United States of America. Why? Because BAR stands for British Accredited Regency. In other words, the founders of this great nation did not want attorneys or barristers to hold public office, President, Congress, etc. Go to any state Supreme Court law library or most other decent law libraries and look for any original printings of the Constitution and amendments done between 1813 and 1868. You should find this original 13th Amendment ratified in 1812. This is the original amendment that Drake was referring to in his interview with David Wilcock. Many people out there have been having a bit of a fit in misunderstanding that the 13th Amendment Drake was referring to was the one most Americans perceive to be the real 13th, and that one deals with slavery. He was not. He was dealing to the actual, original 13th Amendment, which still exists and still is part of our Constitution, even though it has been hidden since shortly after it was ratified. Think for a moment about how many congressmen are attorneys and how many presidents have been. The truth is there, and in some cases easy to find if you know where to look for it. This is one deliberate deception in regard to our history, but it's only one of many. We are taught as well that George Washington was the father of our country. He wasn't. In fact, he wasn't even the first president of our country. There were many before Washington, beginning with John Hanson in 1781. George Washington was actually the conqueror of this nation when 2 years after the passage of the Judiciary Act during his presidency, he issued the first unlawful executive order claiming Congress had given him more power and stripped the nation-states of their sovereignty by establishing them instead as federal districts. This paved the way for the intrusion and usurpation of the banking cabal, which aimed to control the country, and as a result has to this day, even though it wasn't until the unlawful passage of the 16th Amendment in 1913 that they got their claws fully into every aspect of our government and governance by instating the Federal Reserve, which isn't and never was federal. Since 1776, the American people have always had the same concerns, chief among them freedom and liberty. The right to exist without permission, to work and earn for the future, to work and acquire private property, and to pursue that which for them means happiness. They understand that they are born free, even if they don't understand why today they are far from it. There have been many insidious moves by the bankers, who are themselves part of a self-appointed, self-anointed few who believe they're elite. One of the most insidious and damaging tools for gaining control of not only the world's economic systems, but its people, is the UN. This entity was not created for humanitarian purposes, nor does it operate today for humanitarian reasons. Its roots, its history, and its purpose are a subject I'm sure we can address on a future show. But for today, let me say this. There are many freedom groups out there working on different aspects of what they believe to be the key to restoring our nation back to common law and original jurisdiction. Some are focused on the 14th Amendment, some the 10th, some on our corrupt judicial system, and some even on international commerce law. But some, and I want to be very, very clear on what I'm about to say, are working with the UN, a communist-run organization for the purpose of global control, and are also using a specific faction of the Christian belief system to convince followers they're doing the right thing. Most of the people involved in these organizations aren't even aware of what they're doing. I will go on record as saying that any endeavor toward freedom in this country, or any other, which has any involvement with the UN, IMF, Fed Reserve, IRS, NATO, or any other international committee or governance organization is nothing more than a replacement for the criminal cabal we already have in Washington, D.C. It is not proper, it is not legitimate, it is not required, and it is not acceptable for the American people to do any of the following. 1. Sign up with any organization or sign any paper to be American in republic with the rest of us Americans. 2. To file application to a foreign body, such as the UN, to be recognized for who and what we the people are. 3. To create a fantasy government to take over from the criminals. Our government structure is already there. It is just up to us to fire the criminals and hire honorable men and women. 4. Expect some kind of white knight to come riding over the hill to save the day. There will be none. If you need a leader, look in the mirror. 5. To justify to anyone their actions in declaring who and what they are. 6. To ask permission, recognition, or opinion of any other country, world leader, world organization, government, or individual to be a free American. And 7. To expect God to fix the mess we've created. The last time I looked, God wasn't a housekeeper. Gave us free will to make as big a mess as we want. But there was no promise given that if we were too irresponsible to handle freedom and failed to do our due diligence in keeping it, that there would be some kind of mass house cleaning by God to save the day. We the people, we do have a lot of truth to learn.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Is Drake with us yet?
Yes, Drake is with us. Drake, I am very glad that you made it here with us today. Just got kind of nervous that you weren't going to be there. Boy, you've got a lot of people here wanting to hear you. And I know that before we get to any questions, which we will do in the last hour, I want to let you go ahead and lead us into the death of our nation.
Well,
on that.
Being rather familiar with some things and not so familiar with others, I do use the internet a lot. And something people might want to consider is that the ideas of what Teri was talking about in terms of the changes made, the federal districting was only a four-step to other process. Now, what happened basically was a change of venue. A change of venue is where you go to a different court, different judge, for some sort of reason. I can't get a fair trial because everybody thinks I killed somebody, whatever. You can go to a different venue because you know the judge will be lenient in terms of his previous rulings in your favor, or has done so more often than not. This all goes to legality. The basis of legality is simply settlement of dispute. He says, she says. You can look at divorce court on TV if you like. But then you get into the finer points of law where you are placed in a position that you didn't know you could be placed in. That's what happened basically with George Washington, and he wasn't expecting it. But the combination of things that brought this about were all primarily based in financial law. The government of the United States at the time, it was still involved in formation, was a very weak entity. It was strong in its principles. It was strong in the fact that supposedly it had beaten Britain. What is not commonly known are the agreements whereby Britain backed off, whereby extra foreign troops that were hired as mercenaries didn't actually come into play in terms of the revolution itself. The problem with this is that you create an extraordinary system where you got to pay what's owed, the bills due, and you can't afford to pay the rent. What do you do? Well, if you're renting an apartment and you got a place to go, you move. Some people get kicked out of their houses, which is questionable as far as its legality. Some people are put out of a country. Some people run. There's a variety of different ways this goes. Basically, though, back in the days of the formation, it was pretty absolute. The people that you owed the money to could offer a bounty for the collection of it to a foreign country. We'll give you half, you go get the rest. And this was not uncommon in terms of a lot of the wars that happened specifically in Europe. However, the United States kind of got an advantage. They got oceans on both sides. And so that made it a little more difficult. The reason the British backed off, excuse me, was primarily financial. A lot of people are not aware of that. And the